let me ask you a question. Have you ever stopped just for a second to look at the war memorial in the village where you grew up? That's what I'm doing today, and I'm so excited to show you guys. Hello and welcome to another episode here on the Echoes from the Past YouTube channel. You join me today in the village where I grew up, actually at the War Memorial here in Adlington, and this one's really special, because this is the village that I grew up in. I went past this on the bus every single day to and from high school, and it really means a lot to me. So yes, let's dive into it. The War Memorial is in the middle of this small garden area, and it's a sandstone and brass memorial, which is kind of standard for the British memorials anyway, especially the ones I've come across on the Tour of Remembrance so far. The land where the War Memorial sits was actually donated by a local councillor by the name of J.H. Smith. And again, it's that idea of, local people wanting to remember the fallen men who went off to fight in both world wars in the case of Adlington War Memorial here. And it was actually unveiled by Colonel Parker, DSO of the North Lancashire Regiment. And all this information that I found, or most of it, came from a really nice booklet that my mum actually very kindly got for me. They're trying to raise funds for the local church, which is just next door, which I'll go over and visit in a second. Because as it turns out, that church, the original plans was to create kind of a war memorial tower that would go on the top of the church and act as a war memorial. Those plans never really came to fruition, hence why this one was erected. So yeah, all the information came from that booklet and a little bit from Imperial War Museum website as well. So yeah, now that that's a bit of a backstory about the unveiling of the War Memorial, let's go check it out. So yeah, here is the War Memorial in all its glory. The classic Lest We Forget there at the top, and then the brass plate in the middle, obviously commemorating the First World War, 1914 to 1918. And I really love the inscription there at the top, in grateful remembrance, because I think we're all super grateful for the sacrifices that they made. And then the bottom as well, that inscription there, tell Britain, ye who mark this monument, faithful to her we fell and rest content. So that kind of idea of reflection and, don't worry about us. We paid the ultimate sacrifice, but now we're resting. We don't have to endure the horrors of war again. And even though obviously the main memorial here is for the First World War, as military records became uncensored, further plaques were added for the Second World War. So there's one here on the right, and there's one here on the left, which is carrying on the First World War as well. Because obviously these were massive conflicts and records were lost and people were identified way after the wars ended. And also, you've got the inscription there, the 1914, 1918, 1939 and 1945. And as well, you can see there's these smaller plaques underneath, that one there, and there's another one on the right hand side as well, which is actually covered by the wreaths, which I'm not going to move, I don't want to touch them, but they were added in 2009 and 2021 respectively. So I thought I'd just take a view and talk through some more of the details that I found about Adlington War Memorial. So what you'll notice about a lot of the names is that they're from local regiments. A lot of the names are from the same local regiments rather. So the North Lancashire Regiment, the Lancashire Fusiliers and the Royal Lancaster Regiment. And that kind of links to what happened with the First World War with the PALS battalions. And there's actually a memorial in the bigger town, the town of Chorley, which is where I went to high school. There's a really nice statue of commemorating the PALS battalions, and these were battalions where it would be friends and sports clubs. They would all join up together, they would go and serve together. And obviously that was then catastrophic with these massive battles like the Somme and Passchendaele, where whole villages of young men would be wiped out and their bloodlines would be gone. So obviously that was to be put to a stop in the Second World War, which made sense. So then if you compare that to the names of the men who fell in the Second World War, they were from a range of different services. So on this Adlington War Memorial I found, so you've got RAF Volunteer Reserve with some of them, 2nd Battalion King's Own Royal Regiment, and the Royal Navy, a particular sailor who served on HMS Drake 4. And also because these were world wars, even though these names of the men who were from the local areas, they're actually commemorated all over the world. So I've got some examples. So Ellis Atherton is actually buried in the Chittagong War Cemetery in Bangladesh. Thomas Ainscote is commemorated on the Menai Gate in Ypres in Belgium, which I've been very lucky enough to visit, and hopefully I'll be doing a little video on that at some point in the future. That'll be really nice. And that Thomas Ainscote is actually commemorated on the Menai Gate in Ypres because he has no known grave, as a lot of the casualties from the First World War were. You couldn't identify them. So that's a sad, unfortunate fact. But yes, and I think that goes to show that these men, even though they came from a tiny village like Adlington, from what I could find, in the 2011 census, Adlington had a population of about 6,000. I don't think that's changed much in the past, 10, 15 years. It's still a relatively small village. So are the other villages that lie around it, Heath Jarnock and Anderton. So these men came from a small village like this, but then they ended up somewhere that they didn't even know existed, which is, and some of them obviously paid the ultimate sacrifice in a place that they never knew existed, and their families will probably never visited, which is quite sad, really. So yeah, in total there's 207 names, including the extra little plaques that they added after this memorial was originally unveiled, and it covers the villages of Adlington, Anderton, Duxbury, Heath Charnock and Rivington, and these are all kind of similar size villages to Adlington. A really, really nice one. I've wanted to do this video for so long, and it's just trying to time it with work and stuff like that, and weather. The weather always gets a vote, as Al Murray says. But yeah, it's been really nice. And one thing that I wanted to mention was that growing up here, this is a fact I've not really told many people. I told my mum a few months ago that because of the shape of the war memorial, obviously it looks like a door, it looks like a doorway. I used to think when I was growing up, very, very little, I used to think that, and I always knew that it was the war memorial, and I was kind of aware of, what the war was and the history behind it. But I used to think that it was a doorway, that if you went up to it and you opened it, you would walk into the battlefield, into the trenches, and a bit of time travel, a bit like the TARDIS, I guess. And yeah, I still kind of think that today, that God, what would it be like if we could do that, if we could go back, but to see it with your own eyes, we can see it on film, we can read about it in books, but to actually have been there as a bystander, it would have been insane. And I think it would have given us, if it was possible, a way better idea and appreciation. I think some people can be very lackadaisical with history in general and the world wars. They're boring, they're old men hobbies, and they're really not. That's why I love it so much. And I think reading books with like first-hand accounts, that really brings it home. And I would encourage anyone, just go. If you can go back to where you grew up, go look at the names, do some research, because you never know what you might find. You might find a relative that you didn't know that you had a connection to. It's very, very powerful, I think, coming back to where you grew up and kind of paying your respects. So yeah, I've really, really enjoyed this one. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We're almost at 50 subscribers. That'd be really good to reach that before my first year. So that's about April time. I think we can muster up some scoundrels to subscribe to this little pokey YouTube channel here. So yes, thank you again for all the support. I appreciate it. Plenty more to come from me here on Echoes from the Past, and over on Foxhole Chat with the podcast, and my Instagram as well. There's going to be plenty more war waffle. So yes, got one more thing that I want to do with the memorial, so I'll go do that now. But yes, thank you once again, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.